Hi, I'm Taylor Bunn, and this is PlayGrand Adventures.
PlayGrand Adventures is a playground that seeks to create barrier-free play experiences for everyone who visits, regardless of their age or ability level. When fully realized, PlayGrand Adventures will cover 10 acres in the middle of Grand Prairie, Texas's epic central recreation area. Play is critical for social, emotional, physical, and cognitive development, but a significant portion of the U.S. population misses out due to limited opportunities for people with disabilities to fully engage in play opportunities. Providing a place everyone can play together normalizes inclusion, destigmatizes disabilities, and helps build empathy. The Americans with Disabilities Act sets minimum requirements for public spaces, but these requirements are limited and allow inequitable experiences. Typical play spaces either don't have enough to engage people with disabilities in play opportunities, or they're so specifically designed for inclusion or specific disabilities that they aren't engaging for typically developing visitors.
It takes a lot more space. It costs a lot more money to build an all-abilities playground. This is the amount of space you need for a standard swing. And this is the amount of space needed for a wheelchair swing.
Standard wood chips like these cost about $1 or $2 a square foot.
Poured-in-place rubber surfacing is safe, bouncy, and provides cushion, but it costs up to $8 a square foot.
Finally, we lack a common vernacular to consistently describe playgrounds, which leads to misunderstanding and misuse of inclusive elements. For example, are these seesaws inclusive? Are they adaptive? Are they compliant? We know both are ADA compliant according to the law, but one is clearly designed with more inclusive features than the other.
The purpose of this illustrative case study was to understand how and why community members engage with PlayGrand Adventures. Because existing literature pointed to design challenges and difficulties with funding, I chose to focus through the lens of visitor engagement and donor behavior. I supported my work with two theoretical frameworks related to perception and motivation: affordance theory and social cognitive theory.
Affordances are our perception of possible actions related to environmental provisions. For example, most playgrounds provide a slide. For able-bodied children, this affords a possible action of sliding. However, for a child in a wheelchair, it affords an opportunity to watch their friends slide, but not to slide themselves. In social cognitive theory, Bender posited that we learn in a social context through observing, modeling, and imitating the actions and emotional responses of others. This involves a reciprocal relationship among the person, the environment, and the behavior. We see this on playgrounds when younger children copy what they see older children doing on the different pieces of equipment.
Understanding how and why donors and visitors choose to engage with PlayGrand Adventures can help playground leadership make informed decisions about design, implementation, and sustainability. I chose an illustrative case study designed to thoroughly explore and describe PlayGrand Adventures. I used purposive criterion-based sampling and follow-up snowball sampling to identify participants who had a connection to PlayGrand Adventures as social media followers, visitors, and donors.
I began collecting data through an online questionnaire that was posted to the PlayGrand Adventures website and Facebook page. I then conducted follow-up semi-structured interviews with willing participants identified from the questionnaire.
I concurrently conducted on-site observations to explore visitation through my own eyes.
Once data were collected, I open-coded by hand in Excel to categorize data, identify themes, and explore connections to existing literature and my theoretical frameworks.
I uncovered several key findings about how and why community members engage with PlayGrand Adventures, not only as visitors and donors, but also advocates and protectors. Firstly, both visitors with and without disabilities share many values: safety, inclusion, and socialization. Secondly, donors respond to opportunities that are easily understood, immediately actionable, relevant, and offer a personal connection. Finally, PlayGrand Adventures is perceived as an engaging, safe, unique playground that motivates support via visitation and donation.
PlayGrand Adventures visitors value the playground as a community resource. They see it as a place for children to learn and play together with their families and other visitors. Many recognize the innovation of the inclusive elements at PlayGrand Adventures, and they noted that their children play differently at PlayGrand than they do at some of the other local playgrounds. It's an engaging place for anyone and everyone to get outside and play. Two pieces of equipment in particular were highlighted for their ability to bring children together to play. These were the seesaw and the merry-go-round. Children quickly learned that these items were more fun with more people because they were able to spin faster and bounce higher. This invited them to all play together to make it a little bit more risky and fun. Donors were attracted to opportunities that were easy to understand and provided an opportunity for immediate action. For example, online donation was popular because it's really easy to see on their website to just click the button and make a donation. Donating at events was appealing for the same reason. They saw a table set up and they were able to give right away. Another popular opportunity for donors was painting tiles. This allowed anyone to pay $10, paint a tile with whatever type of fun image they wanted, and then they were used to decorate the playground. So this did raise a little bit of money for the playground, but it also provided a reason for people to go and visit and go and look for their tile. This was a great way to build a personal connection to the playground. Visitors had a positive perception of PlayGrand Adventures, noting that the playground is safe and inclusive.
The way the playground is designed affords a perception of safety. There's plenty of places to sit, so visitors have good sight lines when they're looking for their children. These half walls also prevent runners while still maintaining an open view.
Perception of safety extends beyond playground design. The central location, good lighting, and proximity to the police station afford a sense of safety for visitors. This was especially noted by single mothers with young children. The perception of inclusivity was afforded by specialty items like the wheelchair swing, a prized element by people with and without disabilities. For parents, this perception of inclusivity also included the equipment that was large enough for them to play together with their children. This provides important learning opportunities in line with social cognitive theory so that children and parents can play together and learn from each other from that modeling and imitation. One example is the face-to-face swing.
The face-to-face swings allow an adult and small child to swing together. This is important for bonding while playing together.
These feelings make visitors want to keep coming back and make donors want to keep supporting the playground. PlayGrand Adventures has many strengths. First and foremost, it's perceived as safe. Secondly, the variety, diversity, and inclusiveness of the equipment. And finally, the many opportunities for collaboration and interaction. PlayGrand Adventures leadership should keep these strengths in mind as they expand. While they don't want to keep doing more of the same, they do want to still have experiences that are safe, diverse, and inclusive and interactive. There are also some weaknesses that PlayGrand will want to keep in mind as they continue their expansion. There were some potential dangers in architectural features that they might want to reconsider. Notably, these were the stone steps that have become a bit of a hazard for younger visitors. While an attractive architectural feature that affords adults a place to sit, these stone steps too often are perceived as a fun climbing opportunity that is dangerous for small children. There's a noted lack of equipment for the 5 to 10-year-old age group, as well as for older visitors like teenagers and young adults. There's also a lack of a quieter space for visitors who might have some sensory challenges or disabilities.
Future phases of PlayGrand Adventures will bring new zones like Adventure Challenge that will appeal to older children and teenagers who like that risky play. Tranquil Adventures will be a space that appeals to children who need a little bit quieter place to play. It'll have many of the same features as a larger playground, but it's going to be a smaller, more contained space.
There are, of course, the aforementioned opportunities to add more amenities and play spaces, which are in the works, but there's also an opportunity to provide rental spaces for birthday parties or even for occupational therapy, to bring in medical professionals, to do school field trips. So different ways to bring in more visitors while also considering the income stream. There are also opportunities for special events to bring in more community members, raise awareness about PlayGrand Adventures, and also raise awareness for some other businesses in the area. The COVID-19 pandemic was a threat to PlayGrand Adventures like it was for many other recreation spaces. When they chose to close down, this caused mixed reactions among their visitors and fans. Luckily, the pandemic seems to be more under control, and this shouldn't continue to be a problem, but it does present an interesting opportunity for future study on the impacts of the pandemic on how people play. Another threat is maintenance and sustainability of the playground. It is not currently staffed. As we've mentioned before, the equipment is expensive and it does need to be maintained. Finally, there are many competing recreation opportunities in the vicinity, and as PlayGrand is no longer the newest offering, visitation could start to drop off. However, this is still an exciting place to come. People love it, and one of the things they loved was that it's not too crowded. So as it continues to expand and grow, there will be room to bring in new visitors with some new exciting features and still room to spread out for the tried and true fans. PlayGrand Adventures has set a good model to follow for other cities who wish to build their own all abilities playgrounds. This goes back to that idea of modeling and imitating in social cognitive theory. The playground environment and equipment should provide enough variety and comfort so that people of all ages and abilities can play.
These harness swings provide safety and support for visitors of all sizes. These sensory wheels can be used by anyone and can be put almost anywhere. The outdoor instruments can also be enjoyed by anyone regardless of age or ability level.
PlayGrand Adventures has set a good model for fundraising as well.
It's important to think about relevance when seeking out large donors with naming opportunities. This one is from PlayGrand Adventures Architect. Just as important, though, is thinking about small grassroots efforts, such as the tile painting. These don't bring in as much money as larger capital campaigns, but they do help people build a personal connection, and it's fun to come back and find your tile. You could also build in donor recognition to park design. These tiles decorate several points, and this beautiful donor wall fits with the overall design of the playground, but also notes who has supported the progress.
I've distributed my findings through 2 interim reports to Playground Leadership, and have also presented at the Baylor Emerging Research Conference and the Southeastern University's Graduate Research Symposium. I also have a journal article forthcoming later this summer. I will continue to seek out opportunities to share what I've learned with city leaders, playground designers, and those in the medical field who could benefit from learning about therapeutic recreation at all abilities playgrounds.
Access to equitable play opportunities for people of all abilities is a problem in our current society, but places like PlayGrand Adventures are the solution. My hope for this research is that we've shown that it's possible and provided some information to other cities who are looking to replicate a place as special as PlayGrand Adventures.
So again, team, we at Baylor want to just send a huge warm welcome to all of you for choosing to come today to hear Taylor Bunn defend her problem of practice dissertation. We are super excited that you're here with us, and what a joyous day it is for all of you in this room, because each of you has been invited because
Dr. Howell, you got muted somehow.
sorry, or you've been invited because you're a student here at Baylor. So again, we want to welcome you today. I am Dr. Leanne Howell. I have had the cool privilege of facilitating Taylor's research and guiding her through this process for the last almost 3 years. I told her before we invited you all in that Taylor's such an easy student to coach. And so she has been a joy. She has taken feedback with a smile almost, if not every single time. And because of that, she is presenting to you today a fabulous piece of her work, and she is defending this work before you today. So again, welcome from all of us. I am joined by my colleagues, Brooke Blevins and Lacey Papadakis, and I will let the two of them introduce themselves.
Well, good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here. I'm Brooke Blevins, and I have had the privilege of working with Taylor. I taught her in one of her first classes here at Baylor. We were all learning what the heck we were doing, but we prevailed, and here we are some 3 years later celebrating great victories, and that is indeed what we're doing today. So, Taylor, I'm thrilled that I get to be on your dissertation committee. Really enjoyed your work. I learned a ton about playgrounds, but also about playgrounds, universal playgrounds that meet the needs of all young people. And so I'm thrilled for this work and for the impact it's going to have in the community.
I'm Lacey Papadakis, and I have worked closely with Taylor and Dr. Howell on this problem of practice. I work in the Writing Center and met with Taylor regularly and really enjoyed reading her work. And we're also excited to say that she has a forthcoming publication. I believe November is the date. So that's exciting, and just a tremendous project to work on. I would say my one wish is that we could all take a field trip to this playground. And if we could do that, everything would be fulfilled. So with that, I'll turn it back to Dr. Howell.
Well, thank you. Taylor chose to do such a unique but very, very needed study. And so if you haven't had a chance to hear of Taylor's work, we would like or if you have, we would like for her to start out by giving us all a summary. She chose to do a case study. I'm not going to give the whole thing away, but the first little tagline to her title is "The More We Play Together." So Taylor, I'd like for you to just summarize before all of us today kind of what you set out to do, the framework you chose to frame your study, the methodology, and then share with us some of your findings of your study that you've already written about.
Okay. So it's been a great learning experience for me as well. So I did a case study. I chose to do an illustrative single case study because I wanted to focus only on PlayGrand Adventures, and really wanted to use photos and visuals and video and to tell the story really of this space in a way that it could be received by any audience, because it was so new to me when I went into it, and the learning has been so important for helping me understand not just the difficulties facing people with disabilities in play spaces, but how much that just permeates the rest of the world. The world is not designed for people with disabilities to comfortably move through it. And you really see that in these spaces where kids and adults can't play together because of the way they're designed. So that's digging into PlayGrand Adventures provided an opportunity to really understand how it looked at that one space. I used two theoretical frameworks. I started with affordance theory, which basically shows that the environment presents this. This is a provision in an environment. This is a tree stump. But the way we react to that depends on our perception of that item. And so, for a squirrel, maybe that's a home. For an adult, maybe that's a place to sit down and take a break. So what is presented in the environment is static, but we respond to it based on how we perceive it, what we need at the time, and our own lived experiences with similar items. And then I also used social cognitive theory to really start watching how people take those perceptions and how they respond to the specific play environment and how what other people are doing. So this theory puts forth the reciprocity among the person, the behavior, and the environment that they're in. So at a playground, of course, you're seeing kids and adults playing with things differently because of size, because of strength, because of physical attributes, but also because of what they see other people doing. So anyone who's been to a playground has seen a little kid trying to do what a big kid is doing, or has seen a parent trying to teach a kid how to use something appropriately. So I watched for that at the playground, and then also found some interesting connections in donor behavior. Based on this opportunity presented itself, and I like this place because I just played there, so I'm going to make a donation. So both of those, one is a little bit more design based and one is a little bit more human response based, but they ended up working really well in a playground environment. So with the case study, because I wanted to dive deep really into this one place to fully understand it, I looked at donor behavior, utilization, and the perception of the playground and how that impacted both of those behaviors in the community of people, of participants. And I started by doing a Survey Monkey questionnaire, which helps me identify people to interview. So I wanted to do my interviews with people that had some connection to the playground. And I ended up using interviews of people who had actually played at the playground. The COVID pandemic got in the way of some of my observations. So being able to interview participants who had been there helped me fill in some of that data. I was still able to do 14 in-person observations. So that was great. And what I found was that it really is, everyone loves it. Everyone who goes there loves it. So for a lot of reasons, but primarily safety was one of the biggest things that came up. And anyone who has a connection to small children in this group can understand that no matter where you go, we want it to be safe. And that extends from equipment to the actual design, layout of PlayGrand ended up being really important to the people that went, because it's very, a lot of community playgrounds are just like in a box, right? And it's like, here's a slide and here's a swing set and you're in the middle of something. This is a very curved space. There's really no straight lines at PlayGrand. And so what that helps is with sight lines. So you can kind of wind through, and no matter where you are, it's a huge space, but you can see your kid. And there's also seating placed throughout the park. So sometimes there will be benches on the perimeter, but there are benches within each section. There are little curvy things you can sit on and also play on. There's tons of picnic tables, and they all have a space for a wheelchair to go up and sit with people. So everything was very intentional, but pretty much like there's a million places to sit and you can still see your kid. And then there's also gating around it, but there's half walls in between all of the sections that it's kind of like just different, I don't know what to call it, like almost like a fence post, but they're not connected. And so there's space to see, but it's still, they're narrow. So you can't really, a kid has to work hard to get through it. So when you have runners, they're a little bit contained without it blocking your view. So they were just so intentional in creating this safe space that is also really close to a police station, has good lighting, has an adjacent parking lot, things that you don't necessarily always think of at a space this big.
But it was really important, especially to the single moms, that I want to take my kid to play somewhere that feels safe, that has good lighting, that I can get help if I need it. It's not like in the middle of a weird, sketchy neighborhood where, I can't see around corners. So the placement and the design really contributed that to the safety. And then the other main perceptive word was inclusive. And so whether or not people had disabilities, everyone appreciated that the playground could be enjoyed by anyone. And that really extended beyond just someone with a disability can also play. It was the fact that they could play together. It's not designed where it's you play over here and you play over here. It is meant to interact. And something that I didn't really think about until I got into it was just the size difference between adults and children. So even if you're physically capable of playing with a kid, do you fit? So they have a lot of things so it just really expanded my understanding of inclusion. It's not just about disabilities, it's about age and it's about size and that goes into it. And you need these experiences to play with your child. And so they have these great face-to-face swings where you can put, those little baby swings, you can put your baby in the baby swing and look at them and swing together. That's adorable. I've never seen it before. They've got a seesaw that adults can get in. And it really made me think, my brother's on the line. When we take my nieces to go play, they're always wanting to get in those tunnels and things like that. And he can't do it. I'm 5'2". I'm basically child size. I can. And so things like that, like Aunt Taylor can go play, but Daddy can't because of the way it's designed. So those findings really popped out to me, and just the perception, and then leading into it does affect how you can utilize a space. PlayGrand is so big too that it presents different opportunities for children to engage in ways that they can at other playgrounds, again, whether they have a disability or not. One thing I noticed in the observations was they're moving a lot faster at PlayGrand than they are at other playgrounds because there's so much to do. And so a lot of kids will go and play with something for a few seconds and then they're on to the next thing. I have not seen that at smaller playgrounds where they kind of have their favorite thing, but there's not much else to do. They will play for a longer time on certain pieces of equipment that they like. So that's something I think that warrants further study, just to consider how is it the size, is it the quantity, or is it actually that the equipment is designed differently? And then finally with donor behavior, I think it just sort of solidified things I already understood from a background in nonprofit organizations. But on something of that scale, that's multiple millions of dollars, you can't pick one funding strategy. So you need the big things where you're going to go and get $50,000 for naming rights on this piece of equipment, and it needs to be relevant. They've been really smart about reaching out to medical hospitals and orthopedic surgery places. They're engineers, things like that, where you're asking people to write a really big check. It needs to make sense for them. And then there's a nice way to honor them. They've worked those naming rights really beautifully into the design of the playground so that it really builds that community. They're a part of it. And then they did a lot of smaller things. They did a fundraising campaign in the school district. They did tiles you can paint that are then people can do whatever design they want. And now they're put up at the playground, again, becoming a part of it. So that's important because it helps raise some money, but it's also a way to bring people in. And so you have to have multiple approaches. They have to be relevant, and there has to be some sort of immediate action. People are more likely to give when it's simple and they can do it right now. So those are kind of the key takeaways.
Wow, Taylor, you did an amazing job summarizing your work and your findings. You said the word approaches towards the end of your description there. And as we know as researchers, there's lots of different approaches or methodologies that can be used in research. So describe to us today why you felt a case study was the best methodology, the best way to tackle what you wanted to tackle. So why a case study?
Yeah, so I wrestled with that decision a lot. In my heart, I'm a mixed methods researcher. And so it was hard for me to not bring in some numbers. So for this case study, because the playground is so new and it's going to be expanded over time, sticking with using the narrative to really describe what I was seeing and what people were saying helped define a baseline in a way that a mixed method study could. But I think with that, I would have ended up focusing more on numbers of people who were there, numbers of dollars, that kind of stuff that wouldn't really tell the story of the playground in a way that the information would transfer easily to other places that wanted to do the same thing. And one thing I found in the research was people aren't building these not because they don't care, but because they don't really know how. There is a gap in the literature. And as people see one and learn about what it is, they're more likely to build one. So people are seeing it and replicating it. So I wanted to really focus on creating something that is replicable, regardless of the size of the space, regardless of if you're trying to do this from scratch or if you're trying to retrofit something that can exist. And I felt like because I was focused on the one place and I kind of wanted to write it like a narrative and let PlayGrand be, PlayGrand kind of was my participant, was my main participant. I wanted to deeply tell that story. And I mean, the numbers were good, but they weren't really going to add anything. And so qualitatively, this worked out. And I mean, honestly, to be honest too, this was something that was so new to me, and doing research this way at this level was so new to me. I appreciated the flexibility of a qualitative approach. And I wondered the whole time if I needed to do mixed methods, because that is more comfortable for me. But, well, really just quantitative is more comfortable for me. But for the qualitative piece, I'm glad I did it this way, because especially with COVID, I had to change things as I was going. And then I had picked a study to model to do my observations. But when I got into PlayGrand, it wasn't going to work in that location. I tried it a couple of times and wasn't getting what I needed. So I was able to, because there's more flexibility, I was able to adapt to what was going on in the playground, which ended up working better for looking at social cognitive theory. I had to be able to follow the kids where they were going. So it ended up, I don't know that I really knew that at the time. I think I did qualitative because I just couldn't figure out a good way to get mixed methods to work. But ultimately, I think the study ended up being what it wanted to be, which was qualitative.
Yeah. Well, Taylor, I know I speak for all of our team here. We'll look forward to the second, the follow-up study that you can certainly make into be a mixed methods or a quantitative study as well. I have just one more quick question before I turn it over to Dr. Blevins. You are very well read about everything, all-inclusive playground and such. What was one of the surprises, maybe your most surprising finding, or a finding that was not represented in the literature review?
There were so many surprises because, like, again, I went into this completely blind.
We probably only have time for you to share one. So pick your biggest aha.
The thing that really jumps out for me that I didn't see in the literature as much is that ultimately, regardless of disability at the playground, the values are the same. People want to play, they want it to be safe, they want to feel included, they want shade, and they want water fountains, right? So, like, at the end of the day, we're all people. And I don't know if that's missing from the literature because you tend to focus on one thing. So it's like, I'm writing this study about how disabled kids play, how kids with disabilities play at this playground versus how typically developing kids play. And so they're naturally segregated. But that was something that really surprised me, was that really people want the same things. And that may be something that that warrants further exploration.
Interesting. I think in the back of my mind, I remember maybe the first sentence of this study saying something similar to that. So, well, Taylor, thank you for giving us a nice overview of your study. And I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Blevins, who will then turn it over to Dr. Papadakis.
Thanks, Taylor. Got lots of great info from you, and you answered some of my questions, so that was helpful to hear those. I also want to commend you on the fact that this is in publication already, so you're ready to share with the world, which I think is really exciting for what you're doing. I want to talk a little bit about the data collection and some of the choices you made in that, because I think it was really interesting. I'm particularly interested in the collection of data about donor behavior and why that was something you felt like was important to the study. So can you talk a little bit about the incorporation of that into the study and why that you felt like that was important?
So that came from the literature. When I was reading about inclusive playgrounds, all abilities playgrounds, one of the two biggest things that came up were the equipment's not always great and they're very expensive. I mean, it can cost 8 to 10 times more to build a playground like this. And so a lot of the ones that exist now have been funded by, you know, a very wealthy family who had a person with disabilities. It's some response like that, but they're having to continue doing golf tournaments and this, always writing grants because they're so expensive. So that cost presented a barrier. PlayGrand has done a great job at raising money, but even then it's a struggle. They're always going to be seeking donations. They're always hitting the pavement. And so it was something in the literature that I saw echoed in their own experience from my talks with them before I even started collecting data. So because it seemed to be a universal challenge for playgrounds like this, I thought it was important to include it. I started that when I thought it was going to be mixed methods. So I will, you know, I do want to just acknowledge that I did not get the donor behavior probably could have been enriched with some quantitative figures, which I would like to add later. But I think it's also something that ended up being so perception based. And that was another thing that came from the literature. When I was reading about affordance theory, I found this article on affordance theory and fundraising. And that's something that really came out, was that people need to be encouraged to donate. And if it's too hard, they won't do it. Like even if it's something they really care about, they won't do it. And the approach is really important. There was something with I think it was the SPCA or the ASPCA, where they realized that the sad commercials, they were actually losing donations because people didn't want to see it. It was too upsetting. And then when they switched to showing how happy people were with their new fuzzy family members, donations picked up again. And so there really is, you have to design fundraising opportunities the same way you design a playground. You have to be really intentional about, and you have to be inclusive. Are you including people of different financial brackets so that they can contribute in a meaningful way? Are you including opportunities that are comfortable for everyone to utilize? It really is kind of the same thing. So that's why I wanted to do that. And I would like to do it a little more deeply in the future.
I love that connection you just made, that like as you think about designing a playground that's an inclusive space, so too must you think about how to be inclusive in donations.
Yeah.
I thought it was really fascinating how people talked about their behavior as terms of donors. Like it's easier to write a check. That doesn't seem easy to me. If I could Venmo anybody, I could give you all the dollars in the world if my bank account had
and
it.
that was generational by far.
Yeah. Yeah, and the water bill thing, right? Like, okay, we didn't even know we could donate through the water bill, you know, so there are really interesting things in terms of that. I think that part of your study is really fascinating because, and what I appreciated about that dual pronged approach was not only are you saying like, what's the accessibility of the playground? How are people using it? What do they like about it? What is drawing them to this, but also what's going to help sustain this? Because it's one thing to build something. And as you said, it's another thing to maintain it and to keep it open. And we know that's a problem, and particularly in COVID, which I'm reading about, they opened and they shut, they opened and they shut, you know, it's like just so sad, right? But if you don't get that forward momentum, so I appreciate your study did both of those things. Let me ask one more question, just a brief. So how much of this have you shared with PlayGrand and the folks who are there? Obviously you've got some connection, I think, there. What's the takeaway for them?
Yeah, so I sent them a couple of interim reports, and then I actually did one of the presentations I did was one of the park board member who introduced me to PlayGrand Adventures joined me, and we did a panel discussion with the two of us. And then a friend of mine she's an adult with multiple sclerosis with a 3-year-old daughter. So we did a panel discussion on the research and all abilities. And then I've been communicating with them this whole time and checking in, and they've been very involved in the process. And they've actually already been able to use some of the data to fundraise and to share what they're doing. So it was immediately applicable for them. And I think for me, I think y'all know I lead a nonprofit, but now I've really seen the importance of high quality academic research for impact studies. So how do we take something people are doing and distill it down to a 10-page executive summary with meaningful data that was studied and collected in a neutral way to show like, yes, you should fund us because here's what we're doing. So that could really be they've been using it, so why not expand it to other places and let that be another service we offer? I love doing it, and it just really helped everybody learn and package things in a way, again, that can be received with a response. You make the response easy when you show them this matters, here's how we know.
Great point, Taylor. Thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Dr. Papadakis.
Thank you. And Taylor, I just want to say you really have brought your reader along in this narrative, and you've done that through your language, but also through the illustrations. And I think those illustrations are key for your problem of practice, as well as you being on site in your video. I think that really helps make it tangible to your reader. So I commend you for that. So, we've talked a lot about a lot of things, and I know you were eager to consider future questions. And you even mentioned in your problem of practice that you have more questions than answers. So what is the first question you want to tackle, after today? I know you have more than one.
It's an octopus with all of these different tentacles that I want to address. I think, okay. I knew how I was going to answer it this morning, and I'm going to change it because I think there's a real opportunity, and it's timely, to look at how COVID affected how people play. And because it did, obviously, but one of the things I talked with about one of the participants was, do you think these impacts are going to be permanent, or do you think we just have to get through this and it's going to go back to normal? And she really thinks, she's got a young child. So I think the question is like, what are the effects and how long are they going to last? Like, what are the permanent impacts on play and socialization that are coming from having to lock down for over a year? So I think probably that, but I have at least 7 other answers to that question.
Yeah, so basically the short-term and long-term effects of COVID on play. Well, that's a great question to start with, and then you can get to the octopus tentacles.
Yes.
All right, back to Dr. Howell.
Taylor, another question you might be asking yourself is what beverage you're going to order with your fabulous dinner tonight.
Yeah, so we're actually doing happy hour, and I love that you think I'm stopping at 1.
Oh, okay. Well, see, I'm being nice, generous, and professional.
But obviously champagne.
Well, Taylor, thank you again for just answering each of our questions with intense deliberation. And it certainly shows that you have become an expert in your journey over the last 3 years researching all-inclusive playgrounds. Well, with that, Taylor, I am going to, Dr. Blevins and Dr. Papadakis and I are going to exit stage left. We're going to go hang out into a room and deliberate for just a few minutes. We will invite you back with us in the next few minutes into our breakout room. And then we will all join the larger group after we speak with you.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll see you all in just a few minutes.
Dr. Howell? back to you.
Yes, well, Taylor, I'd already welcomed everyone or thanked them for joining us again, but we would, on behalf of all of my colleagues, Brooke and Lacey, we would like to welcome back into the larger room Dr. Taylor Bunn, who has successfully defended her problem of practice, The More We Play Together. And so we are celebrating not only Taylor, but we're celebrating her work and what her work means to all abilities, individuals who want to play, who need to play, who aspire to play. With that, Taylor, I will turn it over to you to address your friends and family.
Thank you all for being here. I didn't get to introduce everybody, but all of you you're all so meaningful for me. And this, when I say it took a village, I can't even, I mean, you know, a third of the people that helped me through this are on this call today. So I want to shout out my mom. Oh, here's my mom. Come here. I literally could not have done any of this without you. This is my mom. So she makes everything possible. I want to say thank you to my brother, Zach, who he started his doctoral journey, which really started me on mine. I want to thank Juan, who I think read my dissertation front to back like 1.5 million times and always gave really good critical feedback. I've got two of my oldest friends, Chris and Lexi, are here. June, I love you. Everybody is just, I'm really excited that you could all be here. This is so special. And Dr. Howell, you've been just the best cheerleader I could ask for through all of this. And without Dr. Papadakis, I mean, y'all, the help she gave me with the writing was invaluable. So, and Dr. Blevins, thank you for being such a good leader for our program. And Avocado, I can't wait to see you defend. So y'all, thank you. You're all so important. If I didn't call you by name, you're still important. And I just am trying to, for once in my life, be respectful of the time I have to speak.
Yeah. Taylor, I want to thank you again just for being such a fabulous Baylor ambassador. You've been such a leader for your cohort, and you have just been such a great inspiration to all of us who get to lead you on this side of the screen. With that, you all, we want to thank you again for joining us. Taylor, congrats again. I wish you I'll see you soon. How about that?
Yes. Yes.
Hey, Dr. Bunn, Dr. Howell, can we take a photo, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so on the count of 3, everybody look at your screen and let's smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, do we just have one screen of folks now?
Yes.
I think so. Okay, let's do one more just in case. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, well, thank you all again. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.